Picture this. You're watching one of country music's biggest stars perform on stage. She's playing 6 different instruments flawlessly, commanding an audience of thousands. Fast forward just a few years. She's trapped in a mangled car wreck, fighting for her life. The crash that nearly ended everything for Barbara Mandrell marked just the beginning of a story that would reshape country music forever. From child prodigy to double CMA Entertainer of the Year, to a shocking retirement that left fans wondering what really happened. Barbara Mandrell's journey is far more dramatic than any country song she ever recorded. What drove one of country music's brightest stars to suddenly walk away from it all? The answer involves a tragic accident, a surprising decision, and a truth that's never been fully told, until now. The year was 1955, and while most kids were learning to ride bikes, 7-year-old Barbara Mandrell was already mastering the steel guitar. In Houston, Texas, the Mandrell household wasn't just a home, it was an incubator for what would become one of country music's most versatile performers. Her father, Herbie Mandrell, wasn't just teaching his daughter music. He was orchestrating the rise of a future superstar. As a music teacher and manager, he recognized something extraordinary in his eldest daughter, a raw talent that went far beyond simple musical aptitude. By age 11, Barbara wasn't just practicing in her bedroom. She was performing on the nationally televised town hall party alongside Joe Mathis, the fastest guitar player in country music. While most children her age were dealing with elementary school drama, Barbara was sharing stages with the likes of Patsy Cline and Johnny Cash. Her fingers danced across the steel guitar strings with such precision that even country legend Chet Atkins stopped mid-performance to watch her play. She wasn't just playing songs, she was redefining what a child musician could accomplish. The music industry had never seen anything quite like her. This wasn't just another talented kid, this was a musical phenomenon who could play multiple instruments before she could drive a car. When most teenagers were attending high school dances, Barbara was touring with the Mandrell family band across the United States. They became regulars on the California circuit, with Barbara front and center, switching effortlessly between steel guitar, banjo, bass, and saxophone. The crowds weren't just impressed, they were mesmerized by this teenage virtuoso who commanded the stage like a seasoned professional. The late 1960s saw Barbara headlining shows in Las Vegas with the likes of Red Foley and Tex Ritter. Her early exposure to the entertainment industry's biggest names shaped her understanding of showmanship. While other performers stuck to one instrument, Barbara was constantly pushing boundaries, incorporating everything from accordion to vibraphone into her performances. The 1970s marked Barbara's transformation from child prodigy to country music royalty. With her debut single, Playing Around with Love, she served notice that she wasn't just an instrumentalist, she was a vocal powerhouse waiting to be unleashed. Her voice, a versatile instrument that could belt out country twang one minute and smooth R&B the next, became her ticket to superstardom. Songs like Sleeping Single in a Double Bed and If Loving You Is Wrong didn't just top the charts. They redefined what country music could be. Each hit showcased her remarkable ability to bridge the gap between traditional country and mainstream pop, creating a sound that was uniquely her own. By 1980, Barbara Mandrell had achieved what few country artists ever dreamed possible. She became the first artist to win the Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year award twice in a row, a feat that spoke volumes about her impact on the industry. Her variety show, Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters, featuring her talented siblings, Louise and Earlene, beamed into millions of homes every Saturday night. The show became NBC's highest-rated program, showcasing not just her musical talents, but her magnetic personality through elaborate production numbers and comedy sketches that left audiences spellbound. In an era when country music was still finding its footing in mainstream entertainment, Barbara Mandrell was breaking down barriers. Her concerts weren't just music shows, they were spectacular demonstrations of versatility that left other performers in awe. She would open with a blazing steel guitar solo, transition to a soul-stirring gospel number on the saxophone, then bring the house down with her powerhouse vocals. Every performance was a testament to her extraordinary range, from tender ballads to foot-stomping country rockers that got entire arenas on their feet. The accolades poured in: Grammy nominations, CMA awards, ACM honors. Barbara Mandrell was collecting industry recognition, like others collected records. Her albums weren't just successful, they were defining moments in country music history. Each new release seemed to push the boundaries of what country music could be, incorporating elements of pop, R&B, and even gospel into her signature sound. She wasn't just crossing over, she was creating a new path entirely. But at the height of her fame, when it seemed like nothing could stop her meteoric rise, fate had other plans. As Barbara's car turned onto that Tennessee highway on September 11th, 1984, nobody could have predicted how dramatically her life was about to change. The crash that awaited Barbara Mandrell would test not just her will to survive, but her entire family's strength. The details of that tragic day would forever change the course of country music history and reveal a side of Barbara Mandrell that few had ever seen. September 11th, 1984, dawned like any other autumn day in Tennessee. Barbara Mandrell was riding in her Jaguar XJ with her two eldest children, Matthew and Jaime, returning from a shopping trip at the Cool Springs Mall. The familiar winding roads of Highway 45 stretched out before them, a route they'd taken countless times before. But this day would be different. This day would mark a dividing line in Barbara Mandrell's life. Everything that came before and everything that would come after. At 3:55 p.m., near the intersection of Highway 45 and Broken Arrow Drive in Hendersonville, time seemed to slow down. A 19-year-old driver in a Ford LTD crossed the center line, veering directly into their path. In those split seconds, Barbara's maternal instincts kicked in. She attempted to swerve, but there was nowhere to go. The impact was devastating. Metal twisted against metal as the two vehicles collided head-on at combined speeds exceeding 80 miles per hour. The aftermath was a scene of chaos and destruction. The Jaguar's front end was completely crushed. The hood crumpled like paper. Emergency responders would later say it was one of the worst crashes they'd ever witnessed. The teenager driving the other car, Mark White, died at the scene. Barbara and her children were rushed to Baptist Hospital, their conditions critical. The news spread through Nashville like wildfire. One of country music's brightest stars was fighting for her life. Barbara's injuries were extensive and life-threatening. Her right leg was shattered, requiring immediate surgery to insert metal rods and pins. Multiple bones were broken throughout her body, her right femur, her ankle, several ribs. But it was the head trauma that worried doctors most. The impact had caused a severe concussion, leading to memory loss and cognitive issues that would plague her for months to come. Her children, though seriously injured, had survived, a fact Barbara would later call her greatest blessing. Matthew had suffered a severe blow to his head, while Jaime endured serious bruising and emotional trauma. The recovery process was excruciating. For months, Barbara underwent intense physical therapy, learning to walk again step by painful step. The head trauma affected her ability to remember song lyrics, a devastating blow for a performer known for her flawless performances. Simple tasks became monumental challenges. The woman who once commanded stadium stages couldn't even remember how to play her beloved instruments. Each day brought new frustrations as she struggled to piece together fragments of her memory. The physical rehabilitation was relentless. 3 times a day, Barbara would work with therapists, pushing through the pain. Her determination became legendary among the hospital staff. Even when exhausted and in agony, she would insist on completing her exercises. The same drive that had propelled her to stardom now fueled her recovery. But the physical injuries were only part of the story. The emotional trauma ran deeper. Barbara struggled with survivor's guilt, knowing that a young man had lost his life in the crash. Legal battles ensued as the victim's family filed lawsuits, adding another layer of stress to her already challenging recovery. The accident forced her to confront her own mortality in ways she never had before. Nightmares of the crash plagued her sleep, and the sound of screeching tires could send her into a panic attack. The country music community rallied around her. Fellow artists organized benefit concerts and sent messages of support. Reba McEntire, Conway Twitty, and George Jones made regular visits to the hospital. Dolly Parton sent daily flower arrangements with encouraging notes. Fans flooded the hospital with letters and prayers, so many that the hospital had to designate a separate room just for her mail. But in the quiet moments of rehabilitation, Barbara faced her toughest audience yet, herself. The questions haunted her. Would she ever perform again? Could she still be the entertainer her fans remembered? Did she even want to be? Through it all, her faith became her anchor. Barbara had always been open about her Christian beliefs, but now they took on new meaning. She spoke of divine intervention, believing that God had spared her life for a purpose. Her husband, Ken Dudney, rarely left her side. becoming her rock during the darkest days of recovery. He would read Bible verses to her when the pain became unbearable, and help her practice her physical therapy exercises long after the therapist had gone home. After 18 months of intensive rehabilitation, Barbara made her triumphant return to the stage. The moment she stepped into the spotlight at the CMA Awards, the audience erupted in a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. She performed If Loving You Is Wrong, her voice perhaps a bit more tender, but carrying new depths of emotion that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. The performance became one of country music's most memorable moments, a testament to the power of resilience in the human spirit. But even as Barbara reclaimed her place in country music, something had fundamentally changed. The woman who emerged from that crash was different from the one who went in, and the decisions she would make in the coming years would leave the entire industry wondering what could have driven one of their biggest stars to walk away at the height of her comeback. The music industry had seen plenty of comebacks before, but Barbara Mandrell's return to the stage in 1986 was different. She wasn't just returning as a survivor, she was coming back as an inspiration. Her first post-accident album, Get to the Heart, soared to the top of the charts. The title track became her last #1, one hit proving that the accident hadn't diminished her star power. But behind the triumphant headlines and standing ovations, Barbara was wrestling with questions that would ultimately reshape her entire life. The touring schedule that had once energized her now felt exhausting. The constant travel, the late nights, the pressure to maintain her reputation as the most versatile performer in country music. It all began to weigh heavily. Even simple tasks like loading equipment became challenging. The physical demands of her high-energy shows, which had once seemed effortless, now took a considerable toll on her body. Her famous instrument transitions, once fluid and natural, required more concentration and effort than ever before. The recovery process had changed her perspective entirely. During her rehabilitation, she had discovered moments of peace in the simple pleasure of being home with her family. These quiet moments stood in stark contrast to the chaotic energy of touring life. The lingering effects of her injuries, though mostly healed, served as constant reminders of her vulnerability. Each performance required more preparation, more recovery time, and more emotional energy than before. By the early 1990s, Barbara's priorities were shifting dramatically. Her children were growing up, and she found herself increasingly torn between her roles as a mother and an entertainer. Matthew, Jaime, and her youngest son Nathan were no longer small children who could easily adapt to life on the road. They needed stability, routine, and most importantly, their mother's presence. The woman who had spent decades pleasing audiences began to realize that the most important audience was right at home. The music industry was changing too. The new wave of country artists, Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, and Clint Black, were bringing a different energy to Nashville. Their high-powered shows featured pyrotechnics and elaborate staging, a far cry from the pure musicianship that had been Barbara's trademark. The crossover style that she had pioneered was now commonplace, and the variety show format she had mastered had largely disappeared from television. She could have adapted, could have reinvented herself again, but something deeper was calling her. In 1996, Barbara began having serious conversations with her family about retirement. The decision wasn't made lightly. She spent months in prayer and contemplation. Her husband, Ken, who had been by her side through every triumph and tragedy, supported her completely. During late-night conversations in their kitchen, they would discuss the future, weighing the pros and cons of walking away. The car accident had taught them both that life was precious and time was finite. The question wasn't whether she could continue performing, it was whether she wanted to. The announcement came quietly at first. Barbara began telling her closest friends and collaborators. Many tried to talk her out of it, arguing that she was too young, too talented to retire. Some suggested she simply take a break instead, but her mind was made up. She had given 4 decades of her life to music, and now it was time for something new. On October 23, 1997, Barbara Mandrell gave her final concert at the Grand Ole Opry House. The show was a masterclass in everything that had made her a legend. For 3 hours, she poured her heart into every performance. She played every instrument that had earned her acclaim. The steel guitar solos were as crisp as ever. Her saxophone work still brought the house down. She performed all her hits, bringing out special guests including CeCe Winans and Clint Black. The emotion in the room was palpable as she closed with her signature song, I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool. As the final notes faded, the audience stood in thunderous applause, many with tears streaming down their faces. The retirement announcement shocked the industry. At just 48 years old, Barbara was walking away at an age when many artists were still in their prime. Speculation ran rampant through Nashville. Was it health issues from the accident? Was she being pushed out by changing musical tastes? The truth was both simpler and more complex. Barbara Mandrell had simply decided that she had given enough of herself to the music industry. In her retirement statement, delivered with characteristic grace, she explained that she wanted to leave while she still loved performing, while she could still give audiences the show they deserved. She didn't want to become a nostalgia act, touring county fairs and casinos with diminishing returns. She wanted to exit the stage the way she had lived her life, on her own terms. The entertainment industry didn't quite know how to handle it. Here was a star who wasn't retiring due to scandal or declining popularity, but simply because she had decided enough was enough. She sold her instruments, including her beloved steel guitar, donated her stage costumes to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and set about creating a new life away from the spotlight. The decision was final and absolute. There would be no farewell tour, no reunion concerts, no comeback specials. As Barbara Mandrell closed the door on her performing career, she opened another one that would reveal a side of her that fans had never seen. The next chapter would prove that sometimes the most powerful comebacks don't involve returning to the stage at all. After Barbara Mandrell stepped away from the spotlight, the true magnitude of her impact on country music began to crystallize. The trails she had blazed weren't just about hit records or sold-out shows. She had fundamentally changed what it meant to be a country music entertainer. A new generation of artists, from Carrie Underwood to Taylor Swift, would cite her as a pivotal influence, particularly her ability to cross genres while maintaining her country roots. The accolades continued to pour in, even in retirement. In 2009, Barbara was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, an honor that moved her to tears. During the ceremony, Reba McEntire spoke about how Barbara had rewritten the rules for women in country music. She wasn't just a singer or a musician. She was an entertainment force who had shown that country artists could be as sophisticated and multifaceted as any pop star. Her influence extended far beyond her music. The Barbara Mandrell Show had played a crucial role in bringing country music to mainstream television audiences. Before reality TV and music competition shows, Barbara had demonstrated that country artists could carry primetime entertainment. Her show's success paved the way for future country music television programming, proving that the genre had mass appeal. But perhaps her most lasting legacy was in redefining what a female country artist could be. Before Barbara, women in country music were often pigeonholed into certain roles: the heartbroken songstress, the honky-tonk angel. She shattered these stereotypes by being equally comfortable playing complex instruments, hosting variety shows, and delivering powerhouse vocal performances. She showed that femininity and musical virtuosity weren't mutually exclusive. Her musical versatility became a blueprint for future artists. The way she effortlessly blended country, R&B, and pop influences foreshadowed the genre bending that would become commonplace in modern country music. Songs like Sleeping Single in a Double Bed demonstrated that country music could incorporate contemporary sounds while maintaining its authentic roots. The instruments she mastered, particularly the steel guitar, gained renewed interest among young musicians. Music schools reported increased enrollment in steel guitar classes, especially among female students who had been inspired by Barbara's example. She had shown that technical mastery wasn't just for the boys in the band. Her decision to retire at the peak of her abilities also set a new precedent. In an industry where many artists continue performing well past their prime, Barbara's choice to walk away on her own terms was revolutionary. She demonstrated that success could be measured by more than just record sales and tour dates. Even more profound was the impact of her transparency about the 1984 accident and its aftermath. Her willingness to share her struggles with recovery, memory loss, and the emotional toll of the crash helped destigmatize conversations about trauma and mental health in the country music community. Many artists who followed would credit her openness as giving them permission to be vulnerable about their own challenges. Looking back, industry veterans often point to Barbara Mandrell as the artist who modernized country music's image. She brought sophistication, showmanship, and cross-genre appeal to country music without sacrificing its core values. Her influence can be seen in everything from the elaborate stage shows of modern country tours to the genre-blending sounds of contemporary country radio. While Barbara Mandrell's legacy in country music was secure, the question on everyone's mind was simple. What does someone do after walking away from superstardom? The answer would surprise even her most devoted fans. The same determination that once drove Barbara Mandrell to master 6 instruments now focused on mastering a completely different skill, being still. After decades of constant motion, she embraced the quiet life at her family's sprawling Tennessee farm, finding joy in the simple rhythms of daily life that her touring schedule had never allowed. Many retired performers struggle with the transition to civilian life, but Barbara approached it with characteristic grace and purpose. She threw herself into domestic pursuits with the same enthusiasm she once reserved for her shows. The woman who once commanded stadium stages found equal satisfaction in tending her garden, cooking family meals, and being present for every moment of her children's lives. The family farm became her sanctuary. Instead of sound checks and rehearsals, her days filled with the gentle routines of country living. She took particular pride in her cooking, perfecting family recipes, and hosting Sunday dinners that became legendary among friends and family. The kitchen replaced the stage as her favorite place to perform, though now her only audience was family and close friends. Her relationship with her children deepened in ways that touring life had never allowed. She was there for school events, sports games, and quiet evening conversations. The time she had always craved with her family was now hers to enjoy fully. Her husband, Ken, who had supported her through every phase of her career, remained by her side as they built this new life together. Occasionally, the entertainment world would come calling. TV shows would request interviews, award shows would invite her to perform, and promoters would dangle lucrative offers for comeback tours. Barbara's response was always the same, a gracious but firm no. She had meant what she said about retiring, and she stood by that decision with unwavering conviction. Instead of performing, she channeled her energy into selective charitable causes, particularly those supporting music education and traffic safety awareness. The 1984 accident had given her a unique perspective on the importance of road safety, and she used her experience to advocate for stricter seatbelt laws and driver education programs. Her rare public appearances became carefully chosen moments rather than obligations. In 2009, her induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame drew her back to Nashville's spotlight briefly. Even then, she remained true to her retirement, declining to perform despite numerous requests. Her acceptance speech focused not on her achievements, but on expressing gratitude to the industry and fans who had supported her journey. Today, Barbara Mandrell's life is exactly what she envisioned when she stepped away from performing. She's a grandmother now, doting on her grandchildren with the same devotion she once gave to her music. The farm continues to be her haven, a place where the only music she needs to hear is the sound of family laughter and the natural rhythm of country living. Those close to her say she's never expressed regret about leaving the entertainment industry. The peace she found in retirement validated her decision to walk away at the height of her powers. In letting go of who she was, Barbara Mandrell found who she was always meant to be. From child prodigy to country music legend to contented grandmother, Barbara Mandrell's journey reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing a star can do is choose to stop shining in public so they can glow more brightly at home. Her story isn't just about music, it's about having the courage to change your destiny, even when the whole world expects you to stay the same. If you found Barbara Mandrell's story fascinating, you'll be amazed by our next video about another country legend who disappeared at the height of their fame. The reason behind their departure shocked the entire music industry. Click the link on screen now to discover what really happened to Randy Travis.